on Warringurry Radio 693 AM. And welcome to another episode of Kimberley Stories here on Warringurry Radio 693 AM. I hope you all had a fantastic week and are well rested for a great weekend. We have in the studio today a muso. She's a teacher. She's been travelling all across the Kimberley. She comes from a little town called Canberra, and she joins us in the studio today. Welcome, Lizzy Rutten.
Oh, thanks, Shanker. It's lovely to be here, mate.
It's great to have you here. So, Lizzy, it's a bit of distance and change between Canberra and
a good 7 days drive, actually, Shanker.
We're going to hear about your story and the work that you've been doing, the really very important work that you've been doing here in the East Kimberley. But we also have the absolute pleasure of having another guest on this show this morning, and I'd like to introduce to the East Kimberley the amazing Emily White. How are you going?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you.
Bit of a surprise for our listeners that we have Emily with us today as well. Who is Emily, Lizzy?
Emily is the other co-director of Grow the Music, another marvellous singer and musician in the band Son of Rut, but she's also my darling partner, Shanker.
And we're very, very excited to have you here in the studio with us, Emily. We're going to go to a song, and we're going to come back and we're going to hear about the amazing journey that these two young ladies have been on. And welcome back to Kimberley Stories on Warringurry Radio 693. You're listening to Shanker, and we have in the studio this morning the wonderful, the only Lizzy Rutten, who is a muso who's been playing some amazing music at some amazing shows here across the Kimberley. You might have seen her at the Ag Show, you might have seen her at the Broome Festival, maybe, as well. Have you played at the Broome Festival?
No, I haven't played at the Broome Festival, Shanker, but I was just going to let you run with that.
Well, that's a big call out, basically, to the Broome Festival. Why haven't you had this woman in your festival as yet? Big shortcoming there. Yeah, so you guys are here, and when I say you guys, I'm talking about also young Emily White, who is the other half of Lizzy Rutten, and together, both of them are a part of a band called Son of Rut. But importantly also, they have founded this amazing program called Grow the Music, which has been taking the Kimberley by storm. Emily, I'll turn to you. What is Grow the Music? What is Grow the Music about?
Grow the Music is this ever-evolving little idea that sort of sprung up through our connections to the Kimberley and our work here in music. And it's become a program that runs in these remote communities and currently running in Wyndham. And it's just an opportunity for people and community members, of anyone in fact, to get involved in music making and learning about instruments and caring for them. And just providing opportunities for people to play together and to perform.
Fantastic. And I guess, Lizzy, it really provides an opportunity for change through music, really, isn't it? It's sort of,
absolutely. It's like you can connect people through music, and when things are hard, music obviously brings joy to people, the ones that are making the music and the ones that are listening. So it's sort of a really amazing medium to work with, and certainly for us, one of the things that I've found most beneficial is it's been a cultural thing that we can break down any barriers between, say, me teaching or me working with adult men or Aboriginal families and that I may not have had any connection with. I've got a massive connection because we can jam together.
Speaking of cultural barriers and breaking through cultural barriers and change, one of the biggest cultural barrier changes and breakthroughs was the very decision for you guys as Canberrarians back in the ACT to make that decision that you actually are going to leave everything behind and come for what was initially a 5-week journey, but then became a 2-year long walk through the Kimberley. What was that like, Em? for you to make that decision with your partner that, hey, we're going to just go on this?
To be quite honest, it was it was an easy decision for me to make, because I'd been in the Kimberley the year before this had started as a music teacher in a primary school in Wyndham. So I'd already developed a love of Aboriginal culture, and I'd developed an understanding of working with the kids in music. And I had a bit of a desire to come back and do something a bit bigger than that. So when we got the call to come to Balgo for 5 weeks, it was a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest.
Do you miss the National Museum and gallery and all that, Lizzie? Do you sort of miss seeing the Parliament House on your way to work at all?
Shankar, I wish the Canberrans came to the Kimberley more often, or if they've never been, like I hadn't. I wish they would come, because in a remote small town of Aboriginal people, there's a lot more to see than I think, even in Canberra. And also, if you didn't get much education about remote Indigenous Australia, then you would find, I think you could dedicate 5-10 years in this place and still be learning a massive amount of things. So yeah, I'm really intrigued by this area of Australia and the people and the culture. So I definitely don't miss Canberra winter.
Lizzie, your family is very musical, aren't they? Your dad is a conductor of choirs, and your broader family and uncles and that have all been involved with music, hey?
I'm actually really lucky, because I've been surrounded by music all the way through my life, and I've had uncles that have been to places and changed over their careers as conductors or music teachers. I've seen the end result where, just for example, my uncle was on PE Island. He was the only music teacher there, and after his 40 years there, the PE Island has the most amount of instruments sold in the whole of Canada per capita, and had most amount of teachers there.
What impact did music have on your life, Liz?
I just loved it, Shankar. I just remember being drawn to it, and just, and I started on the flute, which really didn't attract me at all, and it definitely wasn't my instrument. And from 11, I started the drums, and that's when I became alive. And I certainly remember sort of not being able to sit still at school very well, and had a short attention span. But once I started drumming, it changed everything, and my whole attitude for school was different. Yeah. And
I guess you're seeing that a lot in the work that you're doing right now with kids in the communities, that they are,
Absolutely. If you can't sit still, you need to get on the drums, and it just changes your life. And I can see that with the kids. I identify with it.
Emily, you probably wouldn't be the same with a flute teacher in Wyndham or Balgo, would it be, if you
No.
Hey kids, a flute teacher's come to town.
Yeah.
Get on board.
Flutes aren't up there, high on the list. But,
we are going to go to another break, but stay tuned. We are listening to the wonderful Emily White, Lizzy Rutten. Welcome back to Kimberley Stories here on Warringah Radio 693 AM, where we have Lizzy Rutten, Emily White, Son of Rut band, Grow the Music program, and friends of mine. Emily, when you got the call about the invitation to come out to a remote Kimberley community, there was a lot going through your mind in terms of how we're going to get this together and how we're going to actually pull this off. And for you both and for the idea, a lot of support came together, eh? There was a lot of people that came together on a grassroots level, fundraising and corporate sponsorship on another level. And a part of all that support was something called the Instrument Amnesty. And that's been very, very important to you. Can you tell us a bit about what the Instrument Amnesty is?
It started really as it arose out of a need for us to have more instruments for our program. So we put on quite a big concert in Canberra, and people brought their instruments secondhand, ones that were sitting in the shed for years, or just instruments that people no longer use. They brought them along and donated them for us to bring to Balgo. So it sort of started small as a little concert. We did a little bit of media coverage for it and got a lot of support, actually. A lot of things came out of that very first amnesty. But the most amazing thing is that since then, we pretty much get, every couple of weeks we will get something donated to us back down in Melbourne or Sydney or Canberra.
If I heard it right, Lizzy, that you got a whole shipping container full of instruments at some stage. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Shankar. I had to invest into the cheapest shipping container I could afford because we were broke and we were about to head to Balgo on sort of no money. So, but we needed something to put these instruments in. So,
and certainly this overwhelming support for you actually grew to be pretty useful because the fact that you weren't just doing Balgo. You ended up doing
exactly.
5-6 different communities and ultimately ended up leaving a whole bunch of instruments at each of these communities that you're going. So in an important sense, you kind of need people to continue
absolutely
contributing instruments to your cause,
because we're always giving instruments away to promising musicians. We try to provide drum kits to families who are really passionately drumming all the time. It takes the heat off them coming in to us sometimes, but most importantly it gives them something at home which they wouldn't normally have.
We've been able to give about, in Wyndham, probably 10 guitars out, a couple of drum kits, basically just to the ones that are in there every day and using the space, and then they get to sort of, I think you improve greatly when you've got an instrument at home that you can practice on. So
that's right. I remember my violin teacher always saying, Shankar, you're not practicing enough. You gotta practice makes perfect. I want to take a step back, guys, to talk about what it was like for people who'd spent their lives growing up in Canberra, in a wonderfully exotic place like Canberra. And Emily, you've mentioned that you've already been in the Kimberley, but for both of you, landing in Balgo, which is a very remote community for those listening and who haven't been there before, what was that like to set up home and know this is going to be home for a little while? What was that like, Lizzy?
That was interesting. Driving through Balgo for the first time, I was quite, I wasn't expecting sort of to see what I saw. It was definitely a massive difference to how I grew up. I don't want to say bad things about Balgo, but the few things that I noticed really straight away was the amount of dogs, and I kept thinking, God, this is not that big a place and there seems to be more dogs than people. And I noticed also there was rubbish, a hell of a lot of rubbish sort of lying around, and so that sort of saddened me, and the place looks very sort of unloved in a way because it's so remote and there's no sort of shopping area or anything that they can sort of buy things to sort of improve things like that, and it seems really neglected. On another side to it was, Balgo can teach you about how amazing your loyalty and love for your family is, and how there's a million things that are great about Balgo and the people there to outweigh those things. But it was a massive shock driving in there, and I was really quite sad to see the conditions.
You've been to a number of communities now across the Kimberley. I guess I'm curious about that initial reaction that you had. As people do have that initial reaction when they come to somewhere new, and it's very challenging, it's very different, and it's very harsh. Have you become used, do you think, to the climate, or do you think that initial reaction is something that's still in your mind in terms of how you look at things and how you experience things?
I feel at times removed. Emotionally, I think, because you still need to sort of stay on track when you see a couple of bad things in a week or whatever that upsets you. But Shankar, my massive philosophy in this whole thing is not to judge what people do, but to give them as much time, energy, and my love and passion for music. That is my role here, and that's what I've been given that opportunity to do. So, I just think,
Emily, you probably also share the same sentiments as Liz in terms of the work that you guys were doing in Balgo. What were some of the sort of key highlights of that 5-week period in Balgo?
The highlights.
Or do you think of things when you think back of Balgo? Did anything come to mind specifically of what you remember?
There's a lot that comes to mind. I think that there's something very, very unique about Balgo. It's a very intense and it's almost heartbreaking to be there for any length of time, because it's not normal for me, it's not normal for us. Nothing we're looking at is normal. So I think there's a lot that stands out in that context of, but you're working with kids who view it all as normal. It's for them, this is their life. And there's a lot of things that go on under the surface, but us coming in with music, we're very lucky we get to work on that medium, that positive, powerful medium, and so brings a lot of joy, and it brings out a lot of positive things. So there was a lot of highlights throughout the whole thing because of that.
One of the positive things that you've both mentioned to me as well is actually going back a year later and seeing where and how that place has grown. Lizzy, what was it like for you to go back to Balgo and meet up with those kids that you worked with for that initial period?
Yeah, well, as I said, getting jamming with someone sort of makes you communicate on another level, and I just can't help it. I got all these, young, strapping teenagers, and these, oldies and everything, and I went back, and they just ran and hugged us, and we just felt like we were family to them, like it was just a totally different, and they remembered our names, and they were ready to go. And a couple of the young teenage boys, we live in the school hall when we're in Balgo, and we invited them over for dinner one night just to catch up and say, how you going, guys, and bring your guitars and your bass and we'll have a jam. And they were so good, and they had clearly been practising every night for that year that we'd been away. And I said, Junior and Winston, when did you actually, did you know how to play before we came last year? Because I would have sworn by the level that they were playing at, just extremely talented and playing by ear. And they said, no, you taught us, miss, and I was like, that is just, you can't believe that. When you see something like that, you realise, well, they've got the bug now, and that's their life,
So I can imagine that being extremely rewarding as a teacher, to see a student that you've had, someone that has, you've walked into their lives and you have made a very direct, immediate and apparent, very, very apparent change.
Yeah, it's a really cool feeling.
We're going to keep chatting to these gorgeous, lovely people after we go away to a song, and when we come back, we might even get to listen to some of their music here live in the studio, purely for my own gratification, but I'll let you guys into it as well. You're listening to Kimberley Stories, Warrangary Radio, 693 AM. And welcome back to a gorgeous, gorgeous Saturday morning here on Kimberley Stories with Warrangary Radio, 693 AM. We are listening to the brains trust behind the widely acclaimed program Grow the Music. It's got attention of all sorts of people, including the Australian Human Rights Commission, who have been very, very interested in the growth of this amazing program. Lizzy.
Yeah.
It really has been an amazing journey, hasn't it?
It sure has. It's been life-changing.
One of the things about this program that I think you mentioned has really been exciting for you guys is that you've actually been told that there's been very direct and quantifiable results for your work. You've got principals of schools of the communities that you worked in saying, guys, you've come along, and there's been an increased participation at school. You've got police turning to you and saying, hey, the kids that are participating in these programs may have been offenders before, but they're certainly not doing that anymore. Emily, that must be huge sort of affirmation for you when you do a program and for the community to turn to you and say, hey, we can actually see the results here. Yeah,
it's incredibly rewarding feeling to think that, we have made an impact in a short period of time, and that music has made that possible. I think that we've become a platform too for community agencies and service providers and health professionals, and we've provided a place for them to connect to the youth and to people that they wouldn't normally be able to connect to by coming on our bush trips, by coming and hanging out in the studio. So I think, we're sort of like a connective tissue in at the moment where we're working. That seems to sort of seep into every little corner of the community.
And Lizzy, you have been to a few communities now. You've been to Billaloona. Where's Billaloona?
3 hours from Balgo on the same road on the Tanami.
It's out near the desert, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. And then there's Doon.
Yep.
Good old Doon.
Yep.
And the roadhouse there, and then there's what other places have you been to?
We've been to. We just did a week of drumming workshops at Celebrity Tree Park here in Kununurra for the lead up to the Barramundi Festival. And other than that, we've done. Well, this is our 5th program, I think, in Wyndham in 18 months. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Wyndham a bit later. But what I'm curious about is that you obviously had this very direct impact. Everyone's feeling it. Everyone's loving it. A lot of concerns are sometimes asked about, okay, all right, so you come along and you've done this thing. Now what? Are you going to stick around? Are you going to move on? What are you going to do?
That's it.
Have you asked yourself questions about sustainability?
Absolutely. Yeah, we constantly talk about it. And in fact, it was one of our major goals from the very outset was to turn it into something that was owned on a local level, and something that if we walk away from it and we call it a success, we only do that if there are people in the community that are continuing to run it for us, or taking this music program and kind of owning it themselves. So yeah, there's definitely a huge focus for us on creating mentorship program or other strands into it next year that can start to support local musicians, building their skill sets, giving them training, making them aware that they are capable of running a jam session or hosting a rehearsal space at least for the music in the community.
Because you did mention, Lizzy, before in your story about Bargo and the kids that you came and connected with again, that there is absolutely amazing natural talent here that is just waiting to be discovered, waiting to be nurtured, but kind of needs that sort of guidance and mentoring, as you say, to keep it going.
They have a incredibly sort of different way of learning to how I learnt music. And what I have noticed is the older ones that can play, the kids really look up to that and they actually want to learn from their own people. Often it's just a lack of facility by having a guitar at home or things like that. So I've noticed the Aboriginal people will be more than capable, more than us, to grow the music programs. And like Em said, our goal for next year now is to get work and funding to employ these people, and we'll leave when they're running it, and we'll leave and move on and start another community. So I just feel like we're trying to sort of visualise a 10-year sort of scope, and then at the end of that we'll work for another 10 years or whatever. It's just It's
potentially endless, isn't it? The potential is quite infinite, really.
Absolutely, because there's no reason why it shouldn't be run by these guys. They've got the passion and the drive and the talent. So, yeah, it's just a little bit of guidance from our end, and we're building that relationship with them. That I've got heaps of people in mind that I'd be willing to give a job tomorrow. If we get funding, that's what we'll do.
Well, you're listening to Kimberley Stories in Warringah Radio 693 AM. You're listening to Shankar, and as he talks to Lizzy Rutten and Emily White. I can't believe I just referred to myself in the third person there. I want to grow the music in the studio right now, and I've got an urge to ask you, Lizzy. There's that instrument sitting to your left.
Oh, there is too.
Would you be able to pull it out and mesmerise our Kimberley listeners? It's all about them, really, and play some music for us.
Certainly, Shankar.
What have you got?
This song is called I'll Watch Over You. I've got a guitar beautifully painted by Tossie and Gracie from Balgo. We're on radio, so you can't see it, but it is absolutely gorgeous.
It is a very, very colourful guitar that Lizzy Rutten's got.
And now it's been played by lots of legends around the East Kimberley.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we going to get you singing along as well? Em?
I'll do some BVs.
Here we have a live item from the half the Son of Rut. Here we go.
All right.
Take it away.
This This is such a lovely place. I'm sure I don't wanna leave it, and you don't let me go. But it's out of my hands, believe it. This is the shock we're receiving. It's out of my hands, believe it. This is the shock we're receiving. I won't let you go. I won't let you go. This is such a long embrace. I don't wanna leave it, and you don't let me go. But it's out of my hands, believe it. This is the shock we're receiving. It's out of my hands, believe it. This is the shock we're receiving. I'll watch over you. I'll watch over you. It's out of my hands, believe it. This is the shock we're receiving. It's out of my hands, believe it. This is the shock we're receiving.
Amazing. That's the Son of Rut, live only on 693 Warringah Radio with Kimberly Stories. That was amazing, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
That was tremendous. So that was a song that you guys put together?
Yeah.
Have you
It's a
guys?
Lizzy song. Lizzy wrote that one.
Lizzy Rutten. Amazing. We are going to go to a break, and that means another song, and I feel weird about putting on the next one, but look, we do need to get away for a little bit. Come back, more of Son of Rut and Grow the Music on Kimberly Stories 693 Warringah. And welcome back to Kimberly Stories here on Warringah Radio 693 AM, where we have Emily White and Lizzy Rutten from the Son of Rut and Grow the Music. Guys, you've travelled to a number of communities, you spent a lot of time out here, and you've now landed in Wyndham, where you've been already for some time. What's keeping you going there? What's the program? Is it pretty much the same deal, same situation, Lizzy?
Wyndham is interesting, really, because we have such a... Well, we're working for Now Hour. We come under them, and they get the funding
So
from
Now Hour is an Aboriginal
corporation, yeah, and they receive the funding. Where's it exactly from them? The binge drinking awareness.
It's from the Australian National Health Preventative Agency,
Yeah.
Prevention Agency. So it's health department funding for
So-
binge drinking in particular.
So for us, obviously the first program was mainly about music. We were 4 music teachers. We did a little bit of photography. But over those 5 programs, it's got to the point where we've got kids going out on the street, interviewing their fellow people all about alcohol, and they're coming up with designing the questions, holding the mic stand, taking the cameras. And so from the kids' work, we've actually been able to put 3 videos together to be shown at this concert coming up for every program. Every 4-week program ends in a community concert. And with Balga being under Now Hour, it was a really amazing way that we could go and invite every agency in Wyndham to come and sit around a table and basically get together and say, what areas do we need to work with? Pretty much came back every area. So, yeah.
For those who have just tuned in, we're listening to Lizzy Rutten and Emily White, who have formed this project called Grow the Music, which goes into communities and pretty much runs a classroom for kids on using music to affect social change. And I think one thing I didn't mention earlier is that everyone in Grow the Music are not just musicians, but you actually have, most of you have education backgrounds as well. So Emily White here used to be a teacher, a music teacher. So it's sort
Always,
of...
yeah, being a music teacher.
Yeah, and so I guess you really do create these classroom environments, don't you, in terms of...
Yes, we definitely try to bring that structure into our sessions. You know, every workshop is different, depends on the group of kids, the ages that we're with, and what we're trying to achieve out of it. But, you know, when we work in the schools, you know, we often have our best sessions in the schools as well, because we're coming into a structured environment where the kids are ready to learn already. So what happens when we work outside of school hours in our studio or in another space is that we have to build those structures into our workshops. They're not already there. So, you know, it depends on what environment we're in.
And I guess you could just be dynamic and flexible with you know, different spaces. And
have to be, yeah.
You're looking at potentially coming to Kununurra soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed we can come. We've had some interest to come in January, so the funding's still coming together for that. But I've got some hope that we'll be able to get here and run a few weeks in Kununurra workshops for particular kids.
I want to completely just stop from Grow the Music and just take a step back from that, and I want to ask you guys a question about you two. You guys have been together for a while now?
Coming up to 11 years,
11 years, wow. What has it been like travelling as a couple, working as a couple, living pretty much in each other's space and taking on these pretty massive challenges? What has that meant for you two?
For me, it's been obviously another growth in our relationship, because there was, you know, I didn't think I thought I knew Em down pat 18 months ago, but starting this venture, and actually I've learnt so much from her as a teacher, and she constantly still inspires me creatively, and how she is with the kids and the results that she gets, and I've learned a lot. Sometimes we have fights, obviously, that's pretty normal, and find it hard that, you know, we've had rules like we have to go into the laundry at home to talk about work, because otherwise we're just talking about work constantly, because your life is consumed by work when you're here. But yeah, on a whole, it's just we've been so lucky that we've shared the same dream. I think that's what keeps us together and keeps going. Music has obviously connected us and keeps us going, so it's
it's watching you guys, it's like you two best friends who are just completely in sync with each other, and
well, it hasn't always been like that, Chantal. We've learned to work together.
Work together.
Definitely learned to do that.
Fantastic. I was wondering if there's any chance that you might be able to play a little favourite for me,
Sure.
Em. If you were at the Ag Show earlier this year, Son of Rut performed a song on Encore, and that was
That's right.
Hallelujah. And I can tell you that the entire dance floor just stopped and was just mesmerised by what was going on stage. And I'd be absolutely honoured if you could play that for me, Em.
Okay, well, this song is called Hallelujah, and it's going to go out to Ali in Melbourne, and we sure hope you can join us here soon in the Kimberley. Well, I heard there was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord. You don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. this room and I walk this floor. You know, I used to live alone before I knew ya. I seen your flag on the marble arch, and love is not a victory march. It's just a cold and it's a broken hallelujah, 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 maybe there's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love is how to shoot at someone who outdrew ya. It's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not somebody who's seen the light. It's just a cold and it's a broken hallelujah, 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 the hallelujah.
That was Emily White from the Son of Rut here on Warringah Radio 693, listening to Kimberley Stories. And welcome back to Kimberley Stories here on Warringah Radio 693 AM. You're listening to Shanker, and we've got at the studios today Emily White and Lizzy Rutten. We've all just picked ourselves up off the floor after listening to an amazing rendition by Emily on the guitar and singing Hallelujah. And basically, I think anyone listening is just listening and just wondering, when are we going to be able to hear that again, or music from you guys again? And you guys have a massive concert coming up.
Yep.
Very, very soon.
It's a concert for the Wyndham community. We'll be playing at it, but not necessarily a feature act. It's more about the community members, the kids, the classes from the schools getting up and performing, and yeah, it's going to be the biggest concert yet to date that we've had. It's at the Wyndham Oval on Monday.
We, when you do your programs, this is pretty much a very important part of that program, isn't it? It's when, right at the end, when the kids have gone through all that hard work and the discipline and the focus, and then they get to actually show what they've been doing, Lizzy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this also creates another sort of success in the program of the performance level, because it really drives them to work hard and know that they're going to be on stage. I guess it gives it that extra, really got to try a bit harder and come to rehearsals and take it seriously. And they've totally stepped up to the plate, Shanker. The first concert, between that confidence level and now, is absolutely visible. And so that's why this is the concert that I'm just feeling most confident about, because I just feel like they're ready and they've got the wow factor, I've got a guy called Sean Meehan who's rapping, and he's this 34-year-old Indigenous guy from Umbagari, and he's a beautiful poet, and he's now putting that in on the stage as a performance in a rap song. He's playing 3 tracks, and he's just something else. And yeah, so proud of people like that can now get up in their community and show them for the first time their work.
Hopefully we'll be able to see you guys sooner than later.
Yeah,
hanging around in this town, in this part of the world. I know that Kununurra would absolutely be wrapped with being able to have a program like this come through these streets and work with the kids here, and well, not just kids, but young adults and anyone that can come along. So whoever's listening out there, we really do want to grow the music a part of this Kununurra community and in town, and sharing some of that love. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to have you both here in this space with me. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Just remind me again, details of that concert tomorrow night?
It's
on Monday night?
Monday afternoon. So it kicks off at 2:30 with the Now Hour Family Fun Day, and then followed by that is the whole concert, which will go from 4 p.m. and finish up about 8:30. So it's a really, really big afternoon of music, and Shankar, I hope you can come.
We need you, Kununurra, to come and support Wyndham, and we'll come and support you guys in January.
That's exactly right. You guys have been listening to Kimberley Stories with the amazing Emily White and Lizzy Rutten from the Son of Rut, but also Grow the Music program. Thanks for listening. Join us next week when we meet Lawrence Emery from Kimberley Population Health Unit, who is a social worker here and has got an amazing story as well. So tune in, same time, same place. You're listening to Kimberley Stories here on Warringah Radio, 693 AM. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.